This is not going to go the way of Zimbabwe or Venezuela. It's a real economy, okay? But this does feel a little bit more like Italy 2 months ago. It feels like
Greece of a few years ago?
Just where I was going. I mean, if this gets really, really bad, the powers that be, the ECB, the EU, the IMF, everybody steps in and exerts pressure.
Yeah, that's great. But there still could be, John, market upset between now and that happening. I mean, here we go. It's like the summer of 15. We're worried about China, what the impact is going to be on our stock market as we had a big correction. Now we're in the summer of 18, and here we are focused on everything else outside the United States because here things are so good.
Right. And to Jim's point about, for instance, Greece, when you guys were discussing that, obviously these guys aren't part of the EU. Turkey has tried time and time again to get into the EU. They're not there yet, Judge. So as far as support, if this thing falls and continues to fall, which the leader of Turkey did nothing to help his cause today. Obviously, that's why the Turkish lira pounded all the way through 650 or 660 today. That's all because there is no support mechanism here.
The euro is about to go under 114.
True.
So that's been a steady decline. The stronger U.S. dollar is representative of all that's
a new high, a 13 or 14 month high.
At some point, though, isn't that an issue?
At some point it is, but for instance, right now, and Trump threw more of those tariffs at Turkish metals and so forth this morning. I think overall, Judge, when you look at it in the context of the Egyptian market, their pound back in 2016 fell almost 60%. The Nigerian currency fell about 38% when the oil started softening so hard back in 2016. So these things happen, and it depends how large the economies are and if they're supported by something like the EU. If they're not, then these guys could just go and go away, which they're not going to do. I agree with you, Jimmy.
Lindsey, doesn't this just simply underscore the notion of why people keep saying the U.S. is best?
Yep.
The U.S. is the place to be. The great American stock market is where you want to have your money because you don't have to worry, for the most part, about all the kinds of things that we're talking about today.
Right, absolutely. The U.S. is the best house on the block. It's a very strong economy. You saw second quarter GDP of over 4%. We've got the consumer that's feeling very confident. I know we'll talk about that later. We're not even seeing the impact really from the tariffs that have been put into place yet. You've heard a lot on our earnings calls about steel and aluminum tariffs, but you really haven't seen any impact within our economic data yet about the tariffs on China. What I will say, though, about Turkey is that what no one's brought up yet is the geopolitical significance of the country because they are a huge transportation hub for oil and gas, and that is why this is significant.
So, Rob, should we be taking this a little more seriously?
This in isolation, no. I do agree with you that the U.S., it's about, like real estate, location, location, location. You buy a great location with solid fundamentals, things are going to go well.
Yeah, I worry about exposure to a bad location.
So here's what I would say. When you think about what's happening in EM, there's tremendous headwinds, but part of that is reflected in price, and we're starting to see a value opportunity emerge. How brave are we going to be to step in front of that? I think only time will tell. I think more news needs to come out. As it relates to the U.S., the fundamental backdrop in the U.S. is still really, really strong, but it's also priced for that. So what are we doing for clients? We have looked in portfolios, both in equity and fixed income portfolios, and said, what changes can we make that can de-risk these portfolios a little bit right here? We're trying to acknowledge the fact that these trade tensions are probably going to escalate, get worse before they get better, and that's going to have some impact on equities. So where within equities do we want to be? And we've kind of changed our approach there.
Well, really, I mean, is anybody else sort of changing their view that, look, we use the word this week, formality, when talking about the S&P 500 hitting this new all-time high. Did we get ahead of our...
No.
A little bit there?
No, I don't think so, Judge. And to Lindsey's point, Turkey can be a hub, but it's also why this Nord Stream pipeline that they talked about, of course, when Trump was overseas, meeting with the European leaders, and remember him chastising the head of Germany, Merkel. That Nord Stream pipeline for natural gas doesn't run anywhere near Turkey. I mean, that's the one up on top by Lithuania and all the rest. So, I mean, Turkey is an important player in the region, and they've been important because of attacks that we've based there going into the Middle East and so forth. As far as them being a hub right now, I think you'll see more and more people shunning that because of what's happened over there and because of, basically them digging in their heels against the United States.
You mentioned the Middle East as being important for Turkey. I mentioned Europe. You know who it's the most important for is China. I mean, this is central to the old Silk Road, which is being rebuilt in the One Belt, One Road project. I mean, what I said earlier, I'm going to restate it. There are too many powers that be that will not allow Turkey to fail. Now, how you get Erdogan, who really is the ground zero of the problems there, his economic policies are creating a disaster. How you get him out of there, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you the world really needs Turkey. And so even more so than, frankly, they need Italy. I'm not selling Italy short, but, Italy's woes are quickly.
I think you're underselling and understating what sort of risk you could see come out of the market if it gets worse.
Well, but think about this, Scott. I mean, we're only a half percent.
I mean, no one fixes the situation overnight.
Well, I agree with you, but
you're talking as if it's hey, no big deal.
No. Look, what you're saying is true. It is real. It is significant, and yet we're only a half percent off in the S&P 500 on a Friday in the summer. I mean,
on a day when the lira Turkish lira drops 21% on the lows.
And by the way, it isn't just today. This thing's been unfolding for the whole year.